The Alpha King searched for a new Luna, using his disabled son as the test, until one Omega Refu. The kingdom of Arindor lay shrouded in mist, the jagged mountains surrounding it like watchful guardians. From above, the castle rose like a dark jewel, towers spiraling into the gray sky. Inside its stone walls, history whispered through shadowed corridors, speaking of kings, queens, and curses that had haunted the royal bloodline for generations. The Alpha King Valtheris sat upon his throne, a figure both revered and feared, the weight of the crown pressing down on him like a living thing. Valtheris had ruled for decades, his iron will shaping the kingdom. Yet even a king as powerful as he could not escape the curse that clung to his family. No heir born into the line could love freely. To protect the kingdom, every Luna, the mate of the heir, had to be chosen carefully, tested against the bloodline, and bound to duty before desire. His son, Prince Kalen, watched silently from the edge of the throne room.
Kalen's body was fragile, the result of a childhood illness that had left him weak, though his mind was sharp, full of curiosity and quiet wisdom.
Many whispered that Kalen's disability made him unfit to rule. But Valtheris refused to let the boy feel weakness. Every moment, he trained him, measured him, tested him. And now Kalen had become part of his father's newest plan, finding a new Luna for the kingdom. The Alpha King had summoned the first candidates. They came from distant lands, from noble families and secret villages, their eyes filled with hope, fear, or both. Some knelt, some bowed, some simply trembled, but none had the courage to meet Valtheris's gaze and survive. Among the first candidates was Lyra, a young Omega whose family had fallen on hard times. She entered the castle quietly, her dark hair falling in a braid down her back, her steps steady, her eyes unwavering. Unlike the others, she did not bow too low, did not lower her gaze. She had heard stories of the Alpha King, of his power, his ruthlessness, but she also carried a strange sense of destiny, as if the winds themselves had guided her here. Valtheris' sharp eyes examined her, noting her confidence, her quiet strength. "Step forward," he commanded, his voice echoing in the high-ceilinged hall. Lyra obeyed, moving with calm precision. The other candidates shifted nervously, as if her presence alone disturbed the order of things.
Kalen, hidden behind the thick velvet curtains, watched closely.
He felt a spark of curiosity he had not known in years. Something unspoken stirred within him at the sight of her.
"You are here to serve," Valtheris said, his tone cold and commanding. "The Luna must be strong, obedient, and ready to bear the weight of this kingdom. Pay. Do you understand?" Lyra's lips curved into a small, controlled smile. "I understand, Your Majesty," she said. Yet there was something in her voice, a quiet defiance that made even Valtheris pause. He raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "And you will obey my son's tests. He is the prince. His judgment will determine your fate."
Kalen stepped forward reluctantly.
His hands shook slightly, though he tried to hide it. I will do my best," he said softly, "but I do not wish to hurt anyone." Valtheris's gaze hardened. "The Luna must be proven. Strength is measured by trials. Do you understand?" Kylan nodded, though his heart ached. He did not like this role, did not like the power he was forced to wield. But he could not oppose his father. Not yet. The first trial was simple, yet revealing. A test of patience and empathy. Kalen sat in a high-backed chair, a small silver bell in his hand. Candidates were asked to spend an hour in his presence, speaking with him, entertaining him, showing kindness without flattery. Most candidates fumbled, rushed, or avoided his gaze. They treated him as fragile, as less than capable. Lyra, however, approached him gently. "Bear, She knelt at eye level, her dark eyes bright with curiosity. "Prince Kalen," she said softly, "may I ask about your favorite stories?" Kalen blinked. Few had ever spoken to him like this, as if he were a person first, not a prince to be tested. He felt a warmth spread in his chest. I like stories of heroes," he said quietly, "but also of people who do small things that change the world."
Lyra smiled, her hands folded in her lap.
Des. "Then tell me one of your favorites," she encouraged. And so he did. Bespoke of brave travelers, of quiet villagers whose small deeds had shaped kingdoms, of Aluna who had saved her people not with power but with cleverness and compassion.
Lyra listened intently, asking questions, laughing softly, and never once treating him as weak.
Valtheris observed from the throne, arms crossed, expression unreadable. None of the others had managed to engage Kalen, and he could sense the tension building. Lyra was different, dangerously different. As the hour ended, Kalen found himself reluctant to see her leave. I hope you will stay," he said, almost in a whisper. Lyra inclined her head. "If it is your wish, Prince Kalen, I will." "She will stay," he said sharply, his voice echoing through the hall. "Whether you wish it or not, she will remain." "And tomorrow, the next trial begins."
Kalen's stomach twisted. He had not wanted this, had not wanted to be an instrument in his father's tests, but he also could not deny the truth. He wanted Lyra near him.
That night, Kalen wandered the quiet halls of the castle, stopping by the balcony overlooking the mist-covered gardens. He could see the moon's pale light spilling over the marble paths. He thought of Lyra, of her steady gaze, of the way she had spoken to him, as if he were more than a prince. "You're thinking too much of her," a voice rumbled from behind. Valtheris stood in the shadows, cloak brushing the floor. "Remember why she is here. She is not your friend. She is a tool for the kingdom." Kalen's shoulders tensed.
But she treats me like a person, not like a prince.
Not like a test. Valtheris stepped closer, his eyes hard. "That is dangerous, boy. The world does not care for kindness. Do not let her distract you." Kalen clenched his fists, fighting the mix of fear and longing that churned inside him. He knew his father's words were true in part, yet his heart refused to listen. The next morning brought a new trial. The candidates were led to the castle gardens, where the sun broke through the mist in golden shafts, illuminating statues of past kings and queens. Each candidate was asked to guide Kalen through a series of challenges, puzzles, riddles, and tests of courage. The others stumbled quickly, frustrated by Kalen's questions or frightened by the palace's strange mechanisms. Lyra, however, remained patient. She encouraged him, laughed at his mistakes, and celebrated his successes. Slowly, Kalen began to feel something he had not felt in years, a sense of worth, of being valued for his mind and heart rather than his weakness. Valtheris watched from the castle balcony, his expression darkening.
This Omega could not be allowed to succeed, yet he could not deny that she was changing Kalen in ways no one else could.
His power over his son felt threatened, and a rare, unfamiliar emotion stirred in his chest. Fear. As the sun set and the candidates were dismissed, Kalen lingered behind, staring at Lyra. I want to learn more," he said quietly. "If you will teach me, I will listen." "I will, Prince Kalen," But you must promise to listen to yourself as well. The world will try to shape you into what others desire. Do not lose your own voice. Kalen nodded, feeling a strange mixture of hope and fear. He had never known someone could care for him and still challenge him.
He had never felt seen in such a way.
That night, the castle seemed quieter, yet Kalen could sense the tension building like a storm on the horizon.
The Alpha King's shadow loomed large over the kingdom, and the trials had only just begun. Yet for the first time, Kalen felt a small spark of rebellion in his heart, a spark that could change everything. As he lay in his chambers, staring at the ceiling, he thought of Lyra and whispered to himself, maybe she is not here to test me. Maybe she is here to teach me how to be free. Outside, the castle walls stood silent against the creeping mist. Somewhere in the distance, the wind carried whispers of destiny, warning of challenges yet to come. And in the shadows of the throne, the Alpha King's gaze lingered on his son and the defiant Omega, a flicker of unease crossing his face. Tomorrow, the trials would continue, and Kalen knew deep in his heart that nothing in the kingdom would ever feel the same again. The sun rose slowly over the kingdom of Arindor, its golden light brushing the misty mountains and spilling into the castle halls. In the early morning, the corridors were quiet, empty except for the soft echo of footsteps. Prince Kalen wandered through the halls, his mind restless. The events of the previous day weighed on him heavily. He thought of Lyra, of the way she had spoken to him, as if he were more than just a prince or a test. Kalen's chambers were small compared to the grand rooms of the castle, yet they had always felt safe. But that morning, even within these walls, he could feel the pull of the world beyond, of duty, power, and expectation pressing in from every corner.
A soft knock at the door startled him. "Prince Kalen!" Lyra's voice called gently.
May I come in?
Kalen hesitated, then nodded.
Yes, of course. She stepped inside, carrying a small bundle of parchment and ink. I thought perhaps we could continue yesterday, she said, setting the parchment on a table. If you wish. Kalen's heart lifted slightly. He had been longing for someone to speak to, someone who saw him not as fragile or weak, but as a person. Yes, he said, I want that. Lyra smiled, and for a moment the weight of the castle and the shadow of the Alpha King seemed to fade. They sat together, working through puzzles and riddles, discussing the history of the kingdom, and even inventing their own stories. Kalen discovered that Lyra had a sharp mind, clever and unafraid, willing to question rules without defiance for its own sake. I think, Lyra said after a while, leaning back and studying him, that the world often mistakes strength for power. But true strength is in kindness and in courage to do what is right, even when it is hard. Kalen nodded, feeling the truth in her words. I wish the palace understood that, he said quietly. My father, he wants me to be strong in ways I cannot always see. I feel like I am failing, even when I try. Lyra reached out, placing a hand gently on his.
You are not failing, Kalen. You are learning.
The touch made Kalen's chest tighten. Pay. It was such a simple gesture, yet it carried warmth and trust. For the first time, he allowed himself to believe that someone could see him truly, without judgment or fear. But the calm did not last. A sudden noise echoed through the corridor outside. Both of them froze. Kalen rose quietly, moving to the door. A court sorcerer stood in the shadows, his long robes brushing the floor. His face was lined with age, but his eyes gleamed with knowledge and power.
Kaelin, the sorcerer said in a low voice, you are risking much by allowing this closeness. She is not merely an Omega.
Bell. She may be the key to breaking the curse upon your family. Lyra stiffened, her hand still resting lightly on Kaelin's. Breaking the curse? She asked cautiously. What curse? The sorcerer stepped closer, lowering his voice. The blood of your family is bound. No heir may love freely without consequence. The Luna Chosen must be more than obedient. She must understand the magic woven into your line. And you, young prince, you must understand yourself before you can be free. Bah. Kaelin swallowed hard, the weight of the words pressing on him. And if I fail? Then the kingdom suffers, the sorcerer said grimly. And so do you. Lyra tightened her grip on his hand, her gaze steady. Then we must learn quickly, she said firmly. Bay. We cannot let fear decide our path. Kaelin felt a surge of courage at her words. Together they were no longer merely student and test. They were partners, allies against the shadows of the palace and the weight of destiny. Bay. Over the following days their lessons continued in secret. They wandered through the palace gardens, where statues of kings and queens loomed in the fog, their stone eyes seeming to watch every step. Lyra helped Kaelin decipher old scrolls, teaching him not just knowledge, but insight. How to question, how to see beyond appearances. Kaelin in turn taught Lyra the history of the royal family, of the burdens they carried and the sacrifices that had been demanded of them. Boss. Slowly he began to feel his mind and heart open in ways he had never known. He began to see himself not as a weak prince, but as someone capable of courage, insight, and love. But tension always lingered. The Alpha King watched closely, unseen, his shadow stretching through the halls like a storm. He could feel the bond growing between his son and the Omega, and with it, the threat of defiance. Baltharis had ruled his kingdom with absolute authority, and the thought that Kaelin might choose a path independent of him was unacceptable. One evening as the sun dipped below the mountains, casting long golden shadows across the gardens, Baltharis appeared suddenly, his cloak flowing behind him. His voice was calm, but every word carried weight. Prince Kaelin. Psst. Kaelin's stomach tightened. Father, he began, uncertain. Because you have spent too much time together, Baltharis said. The Luna must be tested, yes. But you are allowing attachment to cloud your judgment. Attachment is dangerous. Obedience is necessary. Lyra stood tall, her shoulders squared. Your Majesty, Kaelin is not weak, and I do not seek to deceive him. I only wish to guide him to his own strength. Baltharis's eyes flashed.
Strength! You are young and untested.
Bears. The bloodline will not tolerate mistakes. Kaelin must follow the rules. You must understand your place, Lyra. Kaelin stepped forward, feeling a courage he had never known.
I am not a tool, Father, he said quietly but firmly. And Lyra is not here to serve me blindly.
She sees me as I am, Beck, and I... Yes. For a moment the Alpha King's face was unreadable. He studied his son, the boy who had always seemed fragile, and then studied Lyra, who stood unafraid in the face of his power. A flicker of something, perhaps fear, perhaps awe, passed through his eyes. The trials continue, he said finally, his voice low but hard. But know this. The bloodline must be preserved. No emotion, no desire, no defiance can undo the crown's duty. He left, his cloak trailing behind him, leaving a silence that was both heavy and suffocating. Kaelin turned to Lyra, his hands trembling slightly. Do you think he will ever understand? Lyra shook her head softly. Perhaps not. But we must find our own understanding first. The crown is heavy, Kaelin, but it does not have to crush you.
Their days became a delicate dance of secrecy and learning.
By night, they explored the hidden corridors of the castle, where ancient tapestries and dust-covered statues whispered stories of the past. They discovered rooms filled with forgotten magic, long abandoned by the kings who feared its power. In these moments, they were free from expectation, free from judgment, free to be themselves. Yet the weight of the curse always lingered. Each step they took toward understanding, each laugh shared, each moment of connection brought them closer, and yet also closer to danger. Kaelin could feel the tension in the air, the invisible threads of power pulling at them from the throne above. One evening, as they sat together in the quiet of the library, Lyra traced the lines of a map with her finger. The palace holds more secrets than anyone knows, she said softly.
And perhaps some of them can help you break the curse?
Kaelin leaned back, watching her, feeling a strange mixture of admiration and longing.
Do you
really believe that?
I do, she said, meeting his gaze. But you must want it too.
You cannot rely on me alone. He nodded slowly, feeling the truth of her words. For the first time, he understood that freedom and strength were not gifts. They were choices, made with courage and heart. As the moon rose outside, casting silver light over the castle, Kaelin and Lyra shared a quiet moment, their hands brushing together over the map. Neither spoke, but the connection was unspoken yet undeniable. In that instant, Kaelin felt hope stir within him, a hope that perhaps the weight of the crown, the curse of his bloodline, and the rules of the kingdom could all be faced together with someone who truly saw him. But even in this quiet, the shadows were moving. The court sorcerer had warned them of danger, and Kaelin could feel it in the air. The Alpha King's attention was sharp, and the world outside the castle walls was not forgiving. Every moment of closeness, every secret shared, was a risk. But yet Kaelin did not regret it. He had tasted a world beyond duty, a world where his heart could breathe. And with Lyra by his side, he felt the first stirrings of courage to face whatever trials awaited him. That night, as they parted in the hallway, Lyra whispered softly, "Tomorrow brings new trials, Kaelin. We must be ready." Kaelin nodded, feeling the weight of destiny pressing down, yet also feeling a spark of strength he had never known. "Bet. I will be ready," he said quietly. And as the castle settled into silence, the shadows deepened, carrying whispers of the challenges yet to come. For Kaelin, for Lyra, and for the kingdom of Arindor, the heart between thrones had been awakened, but the storm of power, duty, and ancient magic was only just beginning. The forest outside the castle was dense, the trees stretching high into the foggy sky. The wind whispered through the branches, carrying secrets of old magic, and shadows moved like living things. Prince Kaelin and Lyra walked carefully along the narrow path, their steps soft on the moss-covered ground. This was a place forbidden to most, but they had ventured here in secret, seeking answers. Kaelin felt the cool air brush his face, and for a moment he felt freer than he had in his entire life. The castle had been beautiful, but its walls had always felt like chains.
Here, in the forest, he could breathe, think, and, most importantly, choose. Lyra walked beside him, her eyes scanning the trees.
The magic here is older than the kingdom, she said quietly. It remembers things the walls of the castle have long forgotten.
We might find answers here about the curse and about your family.
Kaelin glanced at her.
Do you think we can really break it? Lyra shook her head gently. I don't know, but we must try. You cannot live under its shadow forever, and I cannot let you face it alone. They walked in silence for a time, the forest around them alive with strange sounds. Distant calls of unknown creatures, the rustle of leaves, and the faint glimmer of light that seemed to move through the mist as if alive. Bay. Finally they reached a clearing. In the center stood a circle of ancient stones, carved with symbols that glowed faintly in the moonlight. Lyra knelt beside the stones, tracing the lines with her fingers.
These markings! They are older than any magic I've studied,
she whispered. They speak of power, of bonds between hearts, and of curses that cannot be broken lightly. Kaelin knelt beside her, peering at the symbols. Then this is where we begin, Lyra nodded. Yes, but be warned, the truth is not always gentle. The curse is tied to your family's heart, to choices made long ago, and sometimes seeing the truth can hurt more than the chains themselves.
Kaelin swallowed. I understand. I'm ready. The two of them began to study the markings, Lyra explaining what she could, Kaelin asking questions.
As the night deepened, the forest seemed to hum around them, as if the stones themselves were alive. Shadows moved in the periphery, but Lyra and Kaelin paid them no mind, lost in the work of understanding the ancient magic. Hours passed, and Kaelin felt a strange pull in his chest, a warmth that spread through him whenever he touched Lyra's hand. He tried to focus, but his thoughts kept drifting to her, the way she smiled when she explained something new, the way her eyes sparkled in the moonlight, the calm assurance she carried even in the face of danger.
Kaelin? Lyra's voice broke through his thoughts.
Bay. She held out a small crystal glowing faintly. This is part of it. The curse responds to hearts, to choices, to courage. Your heart must be true, Bay. And it must be open.
Kaelin hesitated.
Open? Lyra nodded. You cannot hide behind fear or obedience. You must be willing to feel, to trust, and to act. The curse is not just magic. It is tied to your family's emotions, to what they could not say or do. And sometimes it tests not strength, but love. Bad. He thought of his father, of the weight of the crown, of the fear and expectation that had shaped his life. And he thought of Lyra, who had taught him that courage could be quiet, that strength could be gentle, and that love could be real, even in the darkest of places. I want to try, he said, his voice steady. I want to be brave. Burra, not for the crown, not for my father, but for myself. Inspiration, and for you. Lyra's eyes softened, and for a moment the world seemed to shrink around them. The trees, the mist, the glowing stones, they all faded into the quiet space between them. Then we will face it together, she said. They held hands over the crystal, and the light grew brighter, pulsing in rhythm with their hearts. A warmth spread through Kaelin's body, and he felt something shift deep inside him. But the magic did not remain gentle for long. Suddenly, the forest trembled. Shadows twisted around the stones darker than the night itself, and a low, resonant hum filled the air. Lyra's face grew serious. The curse is awakening, she said. It can sense us. It tests us. Stand firm, Kaelin. Trust yourself. I'm not afraid, he said, though his heart raced. The shadows surged closer, and Kaelin felt a pressure in his chest, as if invisible chains were trying to bind him. He fell to his knees, struggling to breathe. Lyra knelt beside him, her other hand pressed to the crystal bed. Focus, Kaelin. Feel your heart. Trust me. Trust yourself. He closed his eyes, trying to quiet the fear. He thought of Lyra, of her courage, of the gentle strength that had pulled him from his doubts. He thought of the stories he had loved as a child, of heroes who faced impossible trials, not with weapons, but with courage and love. Slowly, the chains in his mind began to loosen. He felt a warmth spread from his chest, flowing through him and into Lyra's hand. Inspiration, shrinking back from the light of their hearts combined. Lyra's voice was steady. Back. Now, Kaelin, speak your truth. Say what you feel. Do not hide. Kaelin took a deep breath, his eyes still closed. I am not afraid to feel. I will not hide. I want to be free. I want to choose my own path. And
I care for her not as a test, not as a duty, but as someone who makes me stronger, makes me brave.
The crystal glowed brighter and the shadows screamed, twisting and writhing as if resisting the light. Then, with a sudden burst, the darkness shattered. The forest was quiet again, the mist settling softly among the trees. Kaelin opened his eyes, feeling exhausted but alive. Lyra smiled, though her own face was pale from the effort. You did it, she whispered. You faced it, and you won. Kaelin smiled weakly, feeling the weight of the castle, the curse, and even his father's expectations lift slightly. For the first time he felt the power to shape his own destiny. But victory was fleeting. A cold wind swept through the clearing, and a shadow moved at the edge of the forest. A figure tall, cloaked in darkness, watching them with intent. Kaelin shivered. Who's there? He asked. The shadow did not answer. It vanished into the mist, leaving only a sense of foreboding. Kaelin glanced at Lyra, who frowned. Something is coming, she said quietly. We may have won this trial, but the curse, it is not finished. And the Alpha King, he will know soon enough what we have done. Kaelin's stomach tightened. He will be angry, he said, and he will punish us. Lyra shook her head. Perhaps. But now you know your own strength. Now you know you are not powerless. The Alpha King may hold the throne, but he cannot control your heart. But here, in the forest, he had learned more. That courage was not the absence of fear, but the choice to act despite it. That love could be a shield, stronger than any sword, and that he could face the darkness not alone, but with someone who believed in him. As they made their way back toward the castle, the forest seemed quieter, yet Kaelin could feel the tension lingering. The Alpha King's presence, though miles away, pressed down on him like a storm cloud. And the shadow they had seen in the clearing reminded him that their victory was only the beginning. That night Kaelin returned to his chambers, exhausted but awake with thought. He stared at the ceiling, thinking of Lyra and the courage they had shared. For the first time he felt a spark of hope, a sense that he could choose, that he could shape the future. Outside, the castle loomed silent under the silver moonlight, but the wind carried whispers of destiny, of power, and of choices yet to come. Kaelin closed his eyes, feeling the warmth of Lyra's hand still lingering in his own, and whispered, "We will face whatever comes." together. And somewhere in the shadows a figure watched, patient and waiting, aware that the heart between the Prince and the Omega had been awakened, but also knowing that the storm of the Alpha King, the curse, and the secrets of Arindor had only just begun. The castle of Arindor seemed smaller under the cold light of dawn, its towers piercing the pale sky. Yet within its walls the tension was heavier than any stone or shadow. Prince Kaelin and Lyra stood side by side in the throne room, facing the Alpha King, whose presence filled the space like a storm. Valtheris's eyes were sharp, dark with a mixture of anger and fear. He had sensed the change in his son, the growing bond between Kaelin and Lyra. And now the trials in the forest and the magic of the stones had only made the situation more dangerous. "You have defied me," Valtheris said, his voice low and cutting. "You, Kaelin, have allowed her to influence you." Breath. "You, Lyra, have dared to teach the prince his own power. Do you know what you risk?" Kaelin stepped forward, steadying himself.
I know, Father,
he said quietly.
but I will not live my life under fear.
"I will not let the crown or the curse control me. Not anymore." Valtheris's eyes narrowed. "Do you understand what it means to challenge me?" To defy the bloodline?
Lyra lifted her chin, her voice firm. "We do."
And we also understand that love, courage, and choice are stronger than fear. Stronger than chains. The Alpha King's hands tightened on the edges of the throne.
Chains? Yes?
Chains keep the kingdom safe. The bloodline must be preserved. Emotion, desire. It is dangerous. Chaos will follow if you allow this defiance to continue.
Kaelin's chest swelled with determination.
Chaos may come, Father, but I would rather face it with truth than live trapped in fear. I am not a test. I am not a tool. Bam. I am your son, and I choose my own path. For the first time in years, Valtheris felt uncertainty, a crack in the armor of his rule. He studied Kaelin, once fragile, now standing with quiet strength, a heart unafraid, eyes blazing with courage. And beside him, Lyra stood unwavering, a calm light in the shadowed throne room. The curse. Valtheris said slowly, "It cannot be broken by mere will. It is bound to your hearts, your choices, your fear." "Do you truly believe you can undo it?" Kaelin took a step closer to the Alpha King, his voice firm but respectful. "I do not know if we can destroy it entirely, but I know that I can face it, that I can live without letting it define me, and I know that I can love without shame, without fear." Valtheris's jaw tightened, his gaze flicking to Lyra. "And you, Omega. You claim to understand the curse, yet you are untested. You may bring ruin to the prince, to the bloodline, to the kingdom itself." Lyra met his gaze steadily. "I risk nothing that he cannot choose himself. Kaelin is no longer a child. He is a prince of Arindor, and he has a right to his own life, his own choices. The curse cannot hold him if he does not allow it to." Silence fell over the throne room, broken only by the faint echo of the wind outside. The Alpha King's gaze softened, not entirely, but enough to show a crack in his iron will. He saw what he had long denied, his son, strong in courage and heart, capable of more than he had believed. Bad. "You would risk the kingdom for a feeling?"
Valtheris asked, his voice almost a whisper. Kaelin shook his head.
"Not a feeling. Love. Understanding. Choice."
They are not weakness, Father. They are strength.
Banned. Valtheris's eyes darkened again, but there was a change in him. He saw the truth he had tried to deny, and for a brief moment he understood the loneliness of power, the cost of control. "You have awakened something," he said slowly. "Something I have not felt in decades. Something I have buried beneath duty and fear."
Kalen stepped forward, heart pounding.
Then see clearly, Father. The kingdom does not need fear to survive.
The crown does not need chains.
And I do not need to live in shadow. Not anymore.
Bet. The Alpha King remained silent, and for a long moment it seemed as if the world itself held its breath. Then, with a gesture slow and deliberate, Valtheris raised his hand toward the throne, signaling for silence in the hall.
"Very well, he said finally, his voice heavy with years of authority.
"You may prove yourselves, but know this: the path will not be easy. The curse has power yet, and the kingdom will test you both." Kalen's chest lifted, hope and determination flooding through him. "We are ready," he said, together. Lyra placed her hand in his, the warmth grounding him. "Together," she echoed. The Alpha King's gaze lingered on them, sharp but less cold than before.
"Then I will not stop you. But remember,
choice carries weight, and every choice has consequence."
As Valtheris withdrew to his private chambers, the tension in the throne room softened, replaced by a quiet anticipation. Kalen turned to Lyra.
"We did it," he whispered, though the fear and uncertainty still lingered. Lyra shook her head gently. "Breath. Not yet. The curse still waits. But we have taken the first step, and now we must face it fully." They left the throne room together, moving through the quiet halls of the castle. The wind outside carried the whispers of history, of kings and queens, of power and love intertwined. And as they passed the windows, the pale moonlight caught their hands, still joined, casting long shadows that stretched into the night. That evening they returned to the ancient stones in the forest, where the first trial had awakened their courage. The symbols glowed faintly in the moonlight, and Kalen felt the pull of magic in his chest once more. Lyra knelt beside him, her hand steady on the crystal. "This is the final test," she said softly. "The curse can be broken if the heart is willing. But it is not just magic you must face. It is the truth of your family, the choices of your father, and the strength of your own heart." Kalen nodded, determination burning in his chest. "I am ready. I will not hide.
I will face it all with you." They placed their hands on the crystal together, and a surge of light filled the clearing, bright and warm.
Shadows danced around them, whispering fears and regrets, memories of the past, and echoes of the curse that had haunted the royal bloodline for generations. Kalen closed his eyes, breathing deeply. He thought of his mother, who had loved and lost, of the kings and queens who had sacrificed their hearts for the crown, and of his father, whose fear had shaped the kingdom. He thought of Lyra, whose courage and trust had shown him a new way. "I choose," he whispered, "to be free, to love, to live, to stand for myself and for her."
Lyra's voice joined his, steady and clear. "I choose to stand with you, Kalen."
To face the curse, to face the shadows, to face the kingdom. Together. The light from the crystal flared, blinding in its intensity. The shadows screamed, twisting and falling away, and Kalen felt a rush of power unlike anything he had ever known. He opened his eyes, and the darkness of the curse shattered, leaving only a quiet, glowing warmth in its place. When the light faded, the forest was calm, the mist soft and silver under the moon.
Callan and Lyra looked at each other, hearts racing, eyes shining with triumph and relief. Callan whispered, almost in disbelief, "We
did it." Yes, we faced it.
And we won. But the victory was tempered by the knowledge that the kingdom still awaited them.
The Alpha King would know, and the consequences of their choices would ripple through every hall, every tower, every shadow of Arindor. When they returned to the castle, they found Valtheris waiting in the throne room. Base, his eyes, sharp and dark, softened as he saw his son and the Omega who had challenged him, faced the curse and emerged victorious.
"You have done what I thought impossible," Valtheris said slowly.
"You have faced the curse and survived. Perhaps the bloodline is stronger than I believed."
Kalen stepped forward, his voice steady.
"Father, the kingdom can survive without fear, and I can live without hiding."
But we cannot do this alone. We need each other, and we need to change the way we rule. The crown should protect hearts, not break them. Valtheris remained silent for a long moment.
Then, slowly, he nodded. "Then, perhaps it is time I learn what it means to lead with heart, as well as strength." But he had not only faced the curse, but had begun to change his father, and perhaps the kingdom itself. As the night deepened, Kalen and Lyra walked together to the balcony, hands joined looking out over Arindor. The stars sparkled above, the mountains silent guardians, the castle peaceful under the moonlight. "We faced the darkness," Lyra whispered. "And we survived. And we will face whatever comes next together."
Even as they stood there, the castle quiet, a shadow lingered at the edge of the kingdom. A reminder that the world was vast, that magic was ancient, and that love, though powerful, must always remain vigilant.
But for Kalen and Lyra, the heart between thrones had been awakened. The curse had been broken. And the kingdom of Arindor, for the first time in generations, could breathe freely in the light of choice, courage, and love. The moon shone bright over the kingdom, silent witness to their triumph, and the winds carried a whisper through the mountains, a promise that even in the darkest night, hearts brave enough to stand together could change destiny itself.